Good morning. I just want to talk to you this morning a little bit about anxiety. It's something that I've suffered with for a few years, and I've tried various different methods to combat it, from mindfulness to CBT, Valium and various other medical things that the doctor has given me. I would say that mindfulness works. It's not something that I dismiss. I did at the beginning totally dismiss it, but with perseverance from family members, I have found it to be extremely helpful. Now, it's not a new concept. As Christians, you just need to read the Old Testament and understand that David practiced it. David sat with God and he centered himself, he got himself focused, and he did these things. Paul preached it, talked about the mind, controlling the mind. Peter talked about girding up the loins of your mind. It's not a new concept at all. It's just something that's been repackaged for the 21st century without God in it. Now, it'd be fair to say that I have struggled with these concepts over the past few years, but something really struck me this morning when I was reading a passage of scripture that was before me in Psalm 139. But before I get to that, I want to read you something else that I was reading in this little philosophy book. And it was written by Descartes again, and in his search for truth, he says, "One fact which I know about God is that he is not a deceiver. Since deceitfulness is an imperfection and God is perfect, it follows that he will not deceive me. He will not allow me to be deceived by anyone else when I am doing my best to get at the truth. So I may rest assured that I will not go far wrong in my attempts to understand the world, provided I am careful in these efforts. Armed with this guarantee of God's goodwill, I can now justifiably dismiss the radical doubts that I entertained at the beginning of my search for truth." And I find it quite incredible that these words written so long ago by this man, they really put into, well, they verbalise exactly where I was at the start of this week. I had boiled everything down to nothing and was wanting to start again at the very beginning with what I know to be true. And my life experience has taught me that God is real, regardless of what my heart says, regardless of what my mind says, regardless of what the world says, and the skeptics and the cynics and the conspiracy nuts. I know that God is real because I've experienced his power, I've experienced his life-changing power, I've experienced it in the lives of others, and it's something that I can't deny. I can run from it, I can try and escape from it, but I can't deny it. And where I find myself today is basically back right at the bedrock of who I am as a person and as a believer in Jesus Christ, that he is the foundation. He is the head, the chief cornerstone from which everything else builds out. And that is really what I want to try and build on over these months. And the thought I want to leave with you today is very, very simple. As I suffer from anxiety, I had a major panic attack last week, and the anxiety is real. There's no denying it. For people who don't know what it's like, saying to someone who's suffering from it, "Give yourself a shake," or "just smile," or "life's not that bad, people have it worse than you," none of these things make any difference at that point. And it's finding strategies to bring it all back. And this is where the mindfulness for me has worked, and getting out of the immediate situation, even for 5 minutes, just to breathe and to bring everything back to the moment. And I believe this is something God has been teaching me, because I was always a future liver. Everything was in the future. Everything was what I'm aiming for, what I'm next, what's next, what's next, what's next, to the extent I couldn't enjoy anything. And perhaps one of the biggest lessons that he's taught me through all of this is living in the moment, enjoying the moment, and not thinking about what's next. Now there needs to be a measure of that coming back in, because without a vision we've got nothing to live for. So I believe that will be the next step in the journey that I'm on. But very simply, this morning what I want to look at is two thoughts. That anxiety is real, and God knows. And reading Psalm 139 has been a rod in my back for years. Since primary school, we sung "Search me, O God, and know my heart today." And I'll be honest, it's been a rod in my back for years singing that song, as you plough over and plough over and plough over all the stuff that goes on in your own heart, and it just pulls you right away down. Because if you're inward focusing like I tend to be, it just drags you down like an anchor in a never-ending weight. And I discovered this morning, just looking at this psalm, that the thought that David was trying to convey was 100% different from what we have been taught. It was completely different from what we have been led to believe. And it was not meant as a rod for our back. It was meant as a source of comfort, as a source of uplifting. Now, just look at this for 1 minute. When he starts at the start of Psalm 139, he's talking about how God has searched him and known him. He knows everywhere he goes, everything he does, every thought that he has, every word before he says it. He says, I can't escape from you anywhere. It doesn't matter where I try and go, you're there. If I get into the dark, you're there. If I go to the depths of the sea, you're there. It doesn't matter where I try and go, you're there. And try as I might, I just can't escape you. And I've been there. I have tried to escape God. I have tried to stop everything. And he pursues us. There's a Lauren Daigle song going on in her new album just now, and one of the lines goes along that I will send out an army. No matter how many times it takes, I will pursue you, and I will send out an army to find you. And that is the message of the gospel. It's the message of the lost sheep. It's the message of the prodigal son. It's the message of the lost coin. These were directed at God's people. He will pursue us, and he has been pursuing me, and I'm grateful for it, because were it not the case, I wouldn't be sitting here today. Now, what I want to leave you with is really simple. The verse, as most Christians are familiar with, is "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. See if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Now the thought, when you look into the Hebrew and the root of these words that has been written down in this psalm, there is no thought of punishment, there is no thought of anger, there is no thought of God being utterly disappointed with us. What David he's just completed this whole psalm about talking how wonderful God is. And it makes no sense that he would finish by thinking that God is angry and hateful towards us. And it's not at all what he's saying. He's saying, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts." David suffered from anxiety. He suffered from depression. He suffered from all sorts of mental illnesses, which is little wonder considering the things that he had gone through and the amount of people he'd killed and all the different things that he faced. It's little wonder that he was an anxious person at times. And he's saying to God, "Search into my heart, try me, and find all of these anxious thoughts, this anxiety, the brain that goes." If you suffer from anxiety and depression, you know the way your brain goes. It's like going off, and then it branches 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 off. And that's exactly the phrase that David is using here, that the brain just goes off in a million different directions. And what he's asking God to do is to bring it all back. And he says, see if there be any way in me. Now it's translated wicked way, and I don't know why the translators put wicked in there, because the Hebrew word that's used is speaking about a sorrow or a pain, whether mental or physical, or hurtful habits that we've developed. And what David is asking God for in his anxiety and his pain is that he pull it right back. Pull it all right back to the centre. Look for these anxious thoughts in me, O God, and lead me in the way everlasting. Point me back to the centre of what it's all about, the branch, if you like, the root of the stem of David, of Jesse. Get me right back to the centre of it all, and help me overcome these hurtful habits, this mental anguish, this mental torture, this physical pain that he no doubt suffered, and lead me in the way everlasting. And finally in verse 17 he speaks about how precious are thy thoughts unto me, O God. How great is the sum of them. I always took that to understand that there was a great big pile of thoughts that God had about me. This massive big mountain of things that God thought about me. And it's not at all the case. Yes, there are, obviously, he has many, many thoughts about us. But in that context, in that verse, David is saying, how great is the sum of the thoughts that you have for me. And what he's talking about there is the highest thought. How great is the highest thought that you have of me. And I needed to hear that today, that he doesn't just think whatever else. There are thoughts, and there are good thoughts, and there are thoughts that I'm sure he is working on to change me. But David got to the point where he thought, how great is the top thought? That's too marvellous for me to comprehend. And as Christians, the great thought is that we are his children, that we are redeemed, that we are forgiven, and he views us as clean and precious and redeemed. What is the top? What is the greatest thought that God has of us? It's that he views us the same way that he views his own son. And that's what I want to leave you with today, because it thrilled me this morning in a way that something hasn't in a long, long time. So I hope you have a good day, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.